the President of the United States confronting the President of South Africa, making a string of false accusations about that country with cameras rolling and the whole world watching. The meeting with Cyril Ramaphosa started amicably enough, with President Trump praising South African golfers and President Ramaphosa talking about the coffee table book on the sport that he brought as a gift. Then, after reporters questioned about the administration making white Afrikaners the only refugees allowed into the country since taking office, while moving to deport Haitians and Venezuelans, to name two, the president was off and running.
A lot of people are very concerned with regard to South Africa, and that's really the purpose of the meeting, and we'll see how that turns out. But we have many people that feel they're being persecuted, and they're coming to the United States. So we take from many locations if we feel there's persecution or genocide going on.
Well, in point of fact, since taking office, the Trump administration has halted refugees from coming into the United States. He signed an executive order effectively shutting down the refugee program, even though there were people who had been approved in the prior administration who actually had faced persecution and were about to come here. They were stopped by this administration. Now, as far as we can tell, no black Africans have been given refugee status since Inauguration Day, and the only people being allowed in, and the only Africans whose entrance is actually being expedited by the administration, are white South Africans. The first ones who arrived, you see them there, were recently welcomed at Dulles Airport by senior officials from the State Department, Department of Homeland Security. This afternoon in the White House, President Trump dimmed the lights and played a video which made the case that white Afrikaners in South Africa are the victims of genocide. Part of the video showed crowds shouting, "Kill the Boers," which is another word for white farmers who descended from the country's original colonists, most of whom were of Dutch descent. And the people shouting it were led by a left-wing extremist who's not actually part of the South African government. He was expelled from President Ramaphosa's party more than a decade ago. Another portion of the clip showed crosses and mounds lining the road, which President Trump described this way.
Now, this is very bad. These are burial sites right here. Burial sites. Over 1,000 of white farmers. And those cars are lined up to pay love on a Sunday morning. Each one of those white things you see is a cross. And there's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers. And it's a terrible sight. I've never seen anything like it. Both sides of the road, you have crosses. Those people were all killed.
And President Ramaphosa, who had sat silently through the video, had a question afterwards.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President? No, I'd like to know where that is, because this I've never seen. I don't. Okay.
I mean, it's in South Africa. That's where.
We need to find out.
Well, keeping him honest, it's entirely possible he knows the answer to that, which is that this purported burial ground is not a burial ground. The crosses are, in fact, symbolic, part of a protest against the murder of farmers, yes, but not burial sites. Those are not graves. Now, crime has been a huge problem in South Africa, and has been a problem for decades. And I'm not talking about the crimes of the white Afrikaner apartheid regime, which were horrific. I'm talking about robberies and murder and assaults. According to the most recent South African official data, there were nearly 20,000 murders from April of 2024 through December of 2024. Of that number, just 36, or about 0.2%, were linked to in any way to farms or smaller agricultural holdings. Of those 36, only 7 of those were farmers. The others were farm workers. Now, South Africa doesn't break down these crime stats by race, but farm workers tend to be black in South Africa. In any event, according to official stats, the number of farmer murders is a tiny percentage of the overall murder rate. And what's more, those who've studied the problem say the motive for most is robbery, not necessarily political or racial. And finally, none of this, according to the UN and others, is in any way meets the definition of genocide, which is what the president has called it before. This is what he said just last week.
It's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me.
Well, interestingly, today, when asked, the president seemed uncertain about calling it genocide.
Genocide is a very strong word. I'm wondering if you've made up your mind as to whether you believe genocide is occurring in South Africa, or you still have doubts, and if you why invite President Ramaphosa here today?
Well, I haven't made up my mind. I hate to see it from the standpoint of South Africa, but also, I'm trying to save lives.
Now, perhaps he just hedged a little out of politeness or musing out loud, which he does at times. But as we mentioned, he certainly leveled the genocide accusation before. Again, farmers are being killed, a small number. It's tragic. Any murder is, but it is not genocide. And while a law was passed in South Africa allowing for confiscation of land that was stolen from black South Africans under apartheid, it also allows for judicial review. And according to the South African government, so far no land has been seized yet. In his first term in office, Mr. Trump wants to ask why there wasn't more immigration from places like Norway instead of what he termed shithole countries. He now seems to be answering that question with more than just talk. Joining us now is New York Times White House correspondent Maggie Haberman. She's also a CNN political analyst and author of Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump, Breaking of America. It was a bestseller in hardcover and is soon in paperback. So Maggie, was this clearly was planned out? Clearly had this film ready, not sure exactly where it came from. Do you know how long this was in the making for?
I think quite a while, Anderson, although I don't know the specifics on how long this video has been in the works, but certainly the confrontation that Trump initiated in the Oval Office has been on his mind and some of his aides' mind for some time. Now that video, as you noted, not just, played lights dimmed, but the White House Twitter account or X account, I believe, pushed it out almost immediately after this meeting. So this is something that Trump wants attention on, and I'm sure he's very happy that there is a lot of news coverage of it now. But regardless of what his desire is, as you said, the facts of what he was lecturing the South African president about sitting there in the Oval Office just are not the case. It does not, as you say, mean that there are not murders taking place of some white farmers, and that it is always a tragedy when somebody is murdered, but the crime rate, and people were saying this to him in the meeting. Crime is bad across the board. It's not just white farmers. There's also rapes. There's also murders. There's robberies, and that is what they were hoping to have the attention on, not what Trump wanted to talk about.
It's remarkable to me that the South African delegation brought South African golfers, hoping that would somehow make the president give him something to talk about or make him comfortable. I guess there was a billionaire, a white South African billionaire there, who tried to impress upon the president the fact there is not a genocide going on there. It didn't seem to ultimately, obviously, have the effect. Where does this go from here? I mean, there were other meetings, and Elon Musk was in the office. It was also interesting to hear the president at one point say Elon Musk wanted this.
Right. Look, we've seen Elon Musk talking about this on X for some time. President Trump was talking about this with people in his first term. He would talk about it with aides in a number of meetings. It just didn't become the topic that it has now, or the cause that it has now for him. You are correct that despite the fact that he had a pretty lecturing and angry tone with a lot of the black officials who were talking, it was when that white billionaire executive was talking to him, that was the first moment that Trump really calmed down. Trump had gotten very riled up at the very beginning of the questions being asked when he was asked about the Qatari jet that the Pentagon is accepting to be converted to a new Air Force One, and he just sort of was off to the races after that. That was the one time that he got calmer, but you're right, he clearly didn't accept what he was being told, which was just factual information. We are seeing him increasingly trying to say that something, and he has a long history of saying things that are not true, but in this case and in recent days on other matters, he is saying things such as the idea that Abrego Garcia, who was sent to El Salvador, that he actually had MS-13 tattooed, those letters and numbers on his hand. He did not. Trump held up a doctored picture that was used. In this case, he is using a video that the president of South Africa is saying, what is this? This is not anything I've ever seen, and Trump would not accept it.
I just want to ask you about your new reporting. A top aide to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was seeking to rewrite an intelligence assessment. It's relating to gangs in Venezuela. Can you just talk about that? Because it's really extraordinary.
Yeah, it relates, thanks, Anderson. It relates to sort of the same issue here, which is that Trump wants a certain fact set to go in a certain direction. There was a request from the White House to intelligence officials back in February about looking for, information related to this Venezuelan gang that they wanted to have establish the idea that the Venezuelan government was controlling this gang and crimes it was committing, accused of committing in the United States. That assessment did not suggest that the Venezuelan government is controlling that gang. the president still signed the Alien Enemies Act, an invocation of it, allowing the removal of alleged members of these gangs to El Salvador. Those flights have obviously become very controversial. My colleagues learned that this assessment contradicted what the president had said. After that initial story came out, this official, Joe Kent, who's a top advisor to Tulsi Gabbard, asked for a second assessment, asked for it to be rethought. And another assessment was produced. It confirmed essentially what the earlier assessment had said. Before that one was produced, Kent still asked for parts of it to be rewritten and some additional analysis to happen so that it didn't get used against Tulsi Gabbard and the president. So look, people, his allies of this advisor, Joe Kent, say he was simply looking for information. Other people question whether this is injecting politics into security assessments and intelligence assessments.
Maggie Haberman, thanks very much. Appreciate it.